The 12 Days of Christmas is traditionally December 25th to January 5th. This is a Christian festive season that celebrates the Nativity of Jesus. Then on January 6th, or in some countries the first Sunday after January 1st, is Epiphany, the Christian feast day that celebrates the revelation of God incarnate as Jesus Christ. But to many others, it's a season of witches and demons and monsters and evil gnomes. Yes, little evil gnomes that possess the power to beat you to death. A witch that flies around looking for messy homes so she can disembowel its inhabitants. Horned demons eager to drag you to hell, and so much more. So in honor of the end of the 12 days of Christmas and the end of the holiday season, let's talk about 12 creepy Christmas monsters and folklore. Because if there's anything I love more than holiday folklore, it's creepy holiday folklore. And it's never too early to prepare for next year. During the 12 days of Christmas, Frau Perchta is on the hunt. Frau Perchta is a Christmas witch and domestic goddess of the Alpine regions of southern Germany and Austria. Frau Perchta is often depicted as a decrepit old crone dressed in rags, ready to deliver punishment to the evil and lazy, or as a white-robed woman bearing gifts for the well-behaved and clean. Frau Perchta loves a clean home. During the 12 days, she flies around the night sky with her posse of demon sidekicks and evil spirits, called Perchten or Straggle, looking for messy homes. Her punishment for a messy dwelling is disemboweling the homeowner and replacing their internal organs with sticks and rocks. Now, while Frau Perchta despises laziness, she also really hated those who worked on Epiphany. She would prefer people to get together and enjoy a nice meal and a nice clean home on this feast day. People would often leave out food for Frau Perchta, such as porridge, so she could join them during the celebration. But don't take this day for granted. If you were lazy during the rest of the year, prepare to face Frau Perchta's wrath. During the 12 days of Christmas, celebrations with costumes and parades in order to ward off Frau Perchta and her band of demons are still popular in Alpine regions today. Residents will dress up in horn masks that resemble the straggle and hold dances and other performances to drive off the evil spirits and pave the way for good fortune in the new year. If you thought Frau Perchta's punishments were bad, the straggle had their own set of punishments reserved for the misbehaved. These furry horned demons, often resembling Krampus, would steal from bad children and tear them to pieces. Want to avoid your child being torn apart by Frau Perchta's terrifying sidekicks? Leave out some food or porridge for them as well, and maybe they'll be more tempted to tear into that rather than a child. People would also often leave food out for the straggle in hopes to receive Frau Perchta's good blessings of health and wealth in the new year. So I think at this point, due to a very recent surge in popularity, most people know about Krampus. But did you know that he often traveled by the side of St. Nicholas? But while St. Nicholas rewards the well-behaved children with gifts, Krampus would rather punish the misbehaved. The name Krampus comes from the old German word Krampen, which means claw, and for good reason. Krampus, half goat, half demon, sometimes companion, of St. Nicholas, according to Central and Eastern European folklore, is a figure of pre-Christian Alpine traditions, a pagan being who eventually became tied to Christian celebrations of St. Nicholas around the 17th century. This Christmas devil carries around chains and birch sticks to whip the bad children before stuffing them into a sack he carries on his back. He either drowns them in a river or brings them back with him to the underworld. Krampus Night, on December 5th, is a night of celebration, especially in countries like Germany and Austria, where young men dress up with elaborate costumes, including masks, long dark hair and fur, cowbells, chains, and other goodies for the Krampus run. The men will then run around and whip the partiers and bystanders with birch sticks. Later during the night, that is when it is said Krampus himself will visit each household. According to the folklore of Greece and the Balkan states, which includes countries such as Bulgaria, Serbia, Albania, Bosnia, Cyprus, and more, these little goblins, called the Calkins, live underground for most of the year and come out to play between the winter solstice and Epiphany. As light-fearing creatures, the Calkins are drawn up by the darkness of the winter solstice and celebrate by tormenting humanity. Because these little black demons fear the light, they only come out at night. They would taunt and torture people out alone with bites and scratches, but staying indoors isn't always safe either. The Calkins would break into homes by sneaking in through cracks and keyholes. To prevent the Calkins from invading your personal space, burn a Yule log or incense and salt. On January 6th, the Calkins retreat back to the underworld where they once again begin sawing the world tree. But during their absence, the world tree has healed itself and they must start all over again. So these little imps are doomed to repeat the same task year after year with no progress. Can you really blame them for wanting to emerge for a couple weeks of fun, wreaking havoc on unsuspecting people and breaking into nice homes? Okay, maybe you can. A little extra folklore fun fact: according to legend, a child born during the 12 days of Christmas is in danger of turning into a Calkins during each Christmas season, starting at adulthood. Well, I was born during the 12 days, and luckily I have not yet transformed into a little goat-footed night demon. Or actually, maybe I have. Luud, the Christmas zombie horse or the grey horse, is part of wassailing folk custom in South Wales. During this tradition, a horse skull is mounted on a pole and decorated with ribbons and bells and a white sheet or sackcloth to hide its bearer. A group of men would then travel door to door with Luud in pursuit of food and drink. This custom, which dates back to the 1800s, typically took place around Christmas or New Year, but that could vary from village to village. When the Luud group approached a home, they would sing a song requesting entry. The homeowners would then have to come up with an excuse or a counter song for why they could not enter. This would then go back and forth until one side wins. If the homeowners lost, the group could then enter with Luud running around creating havoc and scaring the children, while the merrymen of the group play music and everyone else enjoys food and drink. Or tries to enjoy food and drink. Kryla is the Icelandic troll woman who lives in the mountains with her giant black cat and her 13 sons, the Yule Lads. More on that later. Each Christmas, Kryla emerges from her mountain dwelling and begins the hunt for naughty children. Much like Krampus, Kryla would kidnap children and stuff them into a sack. But unlike Krampus, Kryla didn't carry them to the underworld. She carried them back to her cave where she boiled them alive and made them into her favorite stew. Kryla is one of the oldest mythological creatures in Icelandic folklore, and there are mentions of her as far back as the 13th century. By 1746, the Icelandic government banned the legend of Kryla from being used as an intimidation tactic because it frightened children so much. Over the years, the story of Kryla, and particularly the Yule Lads, has lightened up a bit, but that doesn't necessarily stop it from being creepy. Which brings us to the Yule Lads. So, the 3 sons of Kryla may not be as evil as Kryla herself, but they are quite annoying and intrusive. The Yule Lads are each named after a brand of mischievousness or distinct personality trait. They are kind of like a more demented version of the 7 dwarfs from the Snow White tale. Their names are Sheepcoat Claude, Gully Gawk, Stubby, Spoon Licker, Pot Scraper, Bowl Licker, Door Slammer, Skeer Gobbler, Sausage Swiper, Window Peeper, Door Sniffer, Meat Hook, and Candle Beggar. As you can probably guess, Spoon Licker licks spoons, Door Slammer slams doors in the middle of the night, Window Peeper is like a pervert, Meat Hook steals meat with a hook, Candle Stealer steals candles from children, so they are left in the dark, and so on. They might not sound so scary, but remember that in 1746, parents were banned from tormenting their children with these stories. Before that, the Yule Lads were depicted in a much more heinous manner. After all, this was hundreds of years ago, and the thought of trolls running around stealing sheep and food and staring at you through the window at night and slamming doors when you least expect it isn't exactly pleasant. The Yule Lads would only travel one at a time over the course of 13 days, from December 25th to January 6th, They were often accompanied by the Yule Cat. If you don't have new clothes to wear for Christmas, the Yule Cat hates you. This massive feline beast is often depicted in artwork and on Christmas cards as hiding amongst the ice and snow waiting for prey. The luckier victims had all their food stolen and eaten by the Yule Cat, and well, the unluckier victims were made a meal themselves. While the story of the Yule Cat likely dates back to the Dark Ages, written accounts only date back to the 19th century. The Yule Cat is described as being as tall as the tallest houses, so it can peer through the windows and see what everyone received as gifts. I bet the Yule Cat and Window Peeper had a lot of fun together. The story of the Yule Cat is often used to encourage children to work hard so they can afford new clothing, and to work together to make sure their neighbors are also well dressed for the winter. Or else you'll get ripped to shreds and eaten by a gigantic cat. In Scandinavian cultures, the Tomten are gnome-like domestic sprites that watch over farmsteads and animals. They are considered the most popular and one of the most beloved mythological creatures in Scandinavian folklore. These 3-foot solitary creatures are known as caretakers and protectors. In ancient times, the Tomten were believed to be linked to the soul of the original inhabitor or founder of a farmstead. It was thought that each home or farm has a Tomten to watch over it. They tend to live in the pantry, barn, floorboards, or in some lore amongst the burial grounds. Many Scandinavian people treasure the Tomten as lovely little stories from their childhoods, and the magic of the Tomten are still alive today in some towns and countrysides. These little guys are referred to quite fondly in poems and literature, such as Astrid Lindgren's classic children's book, The Tomten. So you're probably wondering why I'm including them here. Well, in some stories, the Tomten can be quite angry little creatures. They are traditional beings who dislike laziness. The 2 ways to anger a Tomten is to change the ways of the farm or to disrespect the farm with laziness or carelessness. If a Tomten is angered, it takes revenge in many ways. They are known to break things around the home, hide important objects, destroy crops and food, and even kill livestock. Tomten can also drive people insane with their tricks and, worse, bite or beat them to death. They are known to have quite a poisonous bite. To appease the Tomten, it's advised to leave food, such as porridge, out for them on Christmas to show gratitude and respect. Also, gnomes are just pretty creepy creatures. I mean, look at them. And have you ever played Fallout? Anyway. Hanstrap is a creepy French monster that comes from the tale of a man who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for worshipping Satan. He was a vain and cruel man who attempted to use black magic to call upon Satan to increase his wealth. After his excommunication, he was exiled to the forest. There, he lived in a shack made of sticks and slowly went insane. The story of Hanstrap is based on a real person. Hans von Trapp, a late 15th century German knight who owned a lot of land and lived his life like a Scrooge. According to the story, von Trapp was involved in a land dispute with a local abbey. He blocked the nearby river in order to deprive the town of its water supply as punishment. After many complaints, von Trapp tore down the block and the town flooded. Eventually, he was excommunicated from the church after complaints to the Pope about his behavior, which the abbey believed went against everything that the church stood for. Eventually, this story evolved into a myth told to children around Christmas time as a warning on how not to live their lives. Then it evolved into something much, much darker. Hans Trapp, banished to the forest and living in a house of sticks, became obsessed with cannibalism. He would disguise himself as a scarecrow-like creature by stuffing his clothes with the straw and sticks of his home and stalk children to eat. According to legend, Hans Trapp captured a young boy and was about to eat him when he was killed by a lightning bolt. But his evil spirit lives on and he continues to roam the earth dressed as a scarecrow and stalking victims. Père Fouettard is another child-eating French monster. His name means Father Whipper, and he was an evil butcher who, according to some stories, accompanied St. Nicholas on St. Nicholas's Day, which is December 6th. According to common legend, which dates back to 1150, Père Fouettard, with the help of his greedy wife, kidnapped 3 young wealthy boys who were on their way to school. The couple robbed the boys and drugged them with poisonous treats. Père Fouettard then put his butchering skills to use and dismembered the boys, salting and stewing the body parts in barrels with the intention of feasting on them. But then St. Nicholas, having discovered this gruesome act, resurrected the boys and sentenced Père Fouettard to become his eternal dark helper. Now dressed in dirty robes and chains, he accompanies St. Nicholas every December 6 to dispense whippings and coal to all the bad children, while St. Nicholas gives out the gifts to the good children. The story of Père Fouettard is mainly known in northern and eastern France, southern Belgium, and in French-speaking communities in Switzerland. He is just one of many of St. Nicholas's unsavory companions throughout Christmas folklore. Another one of his unsavory companions is Belsnickel. This character in Christmas folklore originated in the Palatinate region in Germany and was carried on in Pennsylvania Dutch communities. Belsnickel is often depicted as an old man dressed in dirty old clothes made from fur and a mask with a long tongue. Unlike some of St. Nicholas's other companions, who tend to only deal out punishments while St. Nicholas gets the glory of gift-giving, Belsnickel does both. During Christmas, he delivers socks and shoes full of candy to the well-behaved children. But if the children are naughty, they get a piece of coal. Or they get whipped. There's a lot of whipping going on in these stories. I hope you enjoyed my little video about 12 creepy Christmas monsters and folklore stories. There is so much more that I would have loved to include here, but I have a full-time job that's not this. So maybe next year. After all, this holiday season has now officially come to an end, and we're moving on to a new part of the year full of new stories and folklore that I would love to talk about. Anyway, I hope you had a very scary Merry Christmas and good night.